Welcome to The Kingdom, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics in a land defended by Sir Ross's Knights. Now here's your host, Rocco Jeppy.
Hello again, Knights Nation. Rocco Jeppy here for The Kingdom podcast, and we are set to go with episode number 19. I'm alongside my co-host, Aaron Thomas. Aaron, welcome again.
Thank you for having me.
We're glad to have you back. We missed you on last week's episode, and I've come so accustomed to having a co-host that, it's kind of weird doing this thing solo.
Yeah, I'm sure flying solo was a little different, but you certainly did a good job.
I appreciate that. We're going to talk one of your favorite, if not your favorite subjects this week, and probably a bit into the foreseeable future, as it's the only game in town right now for us, and that's CCBC Essex women's basketball. And we're going to start things off by recapping their last game against Howard. It happened last Tuesday at Howard Community College, where the Knights opened Maryland JUCO Conference and Region 20 play. And Aaron, they did so in a big way, knocking off the Dragons at the Lair 104-83.
And it was a competitive first half for the Knights. They led 46-36 at the break and 23-19 after the first quarter. So pretty competitive to start.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about it here in a little bit. The Knights didn't really take too much advantage of a few first half opportunities, and like I said, we'll get to that here in just a moment. But yeah, it was a little bit had me on the edge of my seat. I was watching the stream from home, and a few select words along the way about some of the calls, of course, because it wouldn't be a sporting event without me yelling at an official, whether they can hear me or actually there in person. It was very competitive for that first half. Like you said, just a 4-point lead after one and 10 points at the break. Then the Knights they did what the Knights have done this year. Maya Moy, she did score 17 of her game and career high 33 in that first half, won 6 of 8 shooting, hit 3 of 3 from behind the arc, and she actually hit her first 7 3-pointers before she missed one. Just had an absolute phenomenal lights-out day. The third quarter, Aaron, big turning point. The Knights come out, they kill that quarter 41-24. They shoot just over 59% from the floor and hit 60% of their 3-pointers.
Yeah, and when you're feeling it, you're feeling it. And Logan Handy was feeling it in that third quarter. So scored 16 of her 17 points in that third quarter, going 6 for 10 from the field. Big part of why the Knights were able to start to run away with that. Fourth quarter, Dragons 23-17. By then, it was a little too late, though.
Yeah, I think what the Knights did is exactly what we alluded to earlier. I was talking to head coach Mike Kenney after the game to get some quotes for the recap, and I asked him, what did you tell your team at halftime? And he said, we basically told them they have to take advantage of the mistakes that the Dragons are making, and that proved to be the difference. In the fourth quarter, the third quarter rather, just absolutely obliterated them. And Logan Handy, she is, we're going to talk more about her when we break down some of the stats later, but she has really come on here lately over the last 3 or 4 games. And when you have somebody like her that can get into that starting lineup, kind of shake the lineup up, we've talked before, Mike Kenney says that this team has probably anywhere between 7 to 8 different people that can start at any given time. It's almost like a hockey rotation. You're almost playing lines at this point.
Yeah, and a big part of the players being able to get into those hockey rotations is their ability to play defense. The Knights forced a lot of turnovers in this game against Howard, 70 turnovers, I believe, in total, if my math is correct, which is a stretch. The Knights did a great job of scoring off those turnovers as well, 45-17 off turnover points in the second half. Mm-hmm. So that was a huge reason why they were able to start breaking away with moving away with that in the second half. And Coach Kenney, we know he's a big Mike D'Antoni fan. He likes to play that 7 seconds or less offense, and those steals and forcing those turnovers is going to help that a lot, because then that opens up the transition game for you.
Yeah, definitely, and your math was correct in the numbers that you were adding, but the the bad setup in the script here, I guess, is my fault. It was the turnovers for the game. The Dragons had 42 total. The Knights had 23. So those two numbers were not exactly what we thought. But that's what happens when you do this stuff and don't have enough time to go over it, I guess, beforehand. But we'll make that switch in the future. I'll make sure that doesn't happen to you again. It was definitely a half of taking advantage. You mentioned the points off turnovers, 45-17. And just dominating in other areas. Points in the paint, 54-38. Second chance points, not domination, but still won that, 25-16. And this is one of the ones that stuck out to me. I mean, obviously the bench scoring always sticks out to me, and we outscored their bench 31-17. But the fast break points, 28-2. And again, I'm not a basketball aficionado, but what that stat tells me, or one of the things that stat tells me, is that our defense is getting back quickly in transition and preventing them from those breakaway points. Yeah,
it's either that or you're making their shots. And as we've already established here today, the Knights were doing that as well. So they were doing a little bit of both of that. And you talk to any coach, and they'll tell you that's a recipe. Limiting those fast break opportunities is a recipe for winning a lot of ball games.
Talking about that bench scoring, Amaya Holmes, she led the way with 13 points, and a name that we've mentioned all season long, Trinity Horton. She had 10 points off the bench. For the game, the Knights shot 47.2%, 42 out of 89 from the floor, and they hit 40.6% of their threes, 13 of 32. At the end of the game, talking to head coach Mike Kenney, and I asked him about Maya Moy, and he had this to say to me. He said, quote, "Maya has been finding her groove over the last few games. We knew a breakout performance was coming, and we're glad it happened in a tough road game." And that's pretty true. I mean, to get a win on the road is tough enough. To get a win on the road in the Maryland JUCO or Region 20 is even tougher. And to be able to handle Howard, their first loss, and get started 1-0 in conference and region play is a big deal.
Yeah, and Coach Sini's right. She is finding her groove. 19.8 points per game, 5th in the MD JUCO. 4th in Region 20 Division 2, and top 20 in NGCAA Division 2. And team leading 5.9 assists as well. That's the real one that stands out, because you kind of miss that if you're watching the game and you're not keeping a box score in front of you. You'll miss those 5 or 6 assists a game, but they do pile up, and I'm sure the coaching staff, they certainly don't miss that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of those stats that the casual fan of the Knights that's just watching the game totals and watching the box score, you kind of lose the fact that not only is Maya great at getting the ball in the basket, but she's really good at finding open teammates and making sure that she distributes the basketball properly.
Yeah, and that gets her some brownie points with the coaching staff, but also with the team as well. You see a lot of guys or a lot of players on teams where you may be the best player or one of the more talented offensive players, but all you can do is shoot. And sometimes you get the offensive rebound, you're not getting that ball right back.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. She also leads the team with a 46.7 three-point field goal percentage. That's good enough for 4th in the conference and 5th in the region on the Division II side. She's ranked in the top 30 for NJCAA Division II. And she's second on the team with 42.3 overall field goal percentage and second with 1.5 steals per game. Just having a great start to the season. Not a great start to her season. She came on a little bit slow, but we're still, the Knights now 8-1 overall. Ranked 10th again in the nation. They maintained that number 10 ranking this week. She got started a little bit slow, but when you're 9 games in, you're still in the beginning of your season. I'm glad to see that she's come on, this early. And the scary part is as we'll talk about later here, is there's still some really good quality basketball players on this team.
Oh, yeah. And some players who haven't got their names called yet in this podcast who are going to very soon.
So we have to get to our first break, folks. When we return, Aaron and I will talk about more of your Knights women's basketball student-athletes. Stick around to find out who. You're listening to the Kingdom Podcast, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics. Mindful U Yoga Studio, located at 1705 Poplar Place in historic Dundalk, Maryland. This Saturday, December 7th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. is holding a grand reopening to celebrate 1 year in business and the completion of its studio renovations. The celebration is open to all with several fun events, many of which are free. A kids' mindful art project, chair massage, energy work, herbalism discussions, a drum circle, biomat introduction, angel card readings, and more. Food and drink will be available. So head down to Mindful You Yoga on Saturday, December 7th, beginning at 11 a.m., and then swing back to the Kingdom and catch your Knights women's basketball team take on Potomac State at 2 p.m. For more information, visit Mindful You Yoga Studio on Facebook. You can visit them online at mindfulyouyoga.com or call 410-935-2690. Mindful You Yoga Studio, where your attention goes, energy flows. Bring your attention inward to watch the magic unfold.
Let's talk about college. Times have changed, and I understand that an expensive school doesn't mean higher quality education. Sorry, Pops.
Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online and see what you can be.
Hello, folks. We are back. Rocco Jeppy here alongside Aaron Thomas on the Kingdom Podcast, and we thank you for joining us. Aaron, we're going to start talking about some of the other student athletes on this team. A few we've kind of mentioned in passing here already, but let's get started with one of the captains of this team, Casey Gagan.
Yeah, team leading 3.1 steals per game, 13th in MD JUCO, and 8th in the Region 20. Getting after it defensively, and that's a huge stat for your point guard. Shows that she's picking the defender up pretty much full court probably every time, at least in the beginning of the games, and getting after it, and nothing comes easy. And she's also getting after it on the offensive side of the things as well. 15 points per game, second on the team.
Yeah, I think they have several young women on this team that can handle the rock. Those 2.8 assists per game, second on the team, 15th in the region, Division II. And when you have, I'd probably say offhand, 3 to 4 people on this team that can get them up court and distribute the ball. And Casey is certainly one of the best in doing that. That spells trouble for a lot of teams. And she's known a little bit for her three-point shooting. She's third on the team and 16th and 15th, respectively, in the conference and Region 20 Division II, sitting at 32.1%. I would be very surprised if that number isn't closer to 40% when we hit winter break later this month. And then the free throw percentage, Aaron, she's getting it done at the charity stripe and doing her job.
Yeah, I was just looking over those numbers as you were talking there, and they look good, but you know that she's capable of better, and I don't mean that to be rude at all. I mean that in a positive. I think when we're doing this podcast in another week or two, we're going to be talking about those numbers looking a little bit better.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sitting at just over 78% and still top 5 in the region, top 5 in the conference, and she has hit nearly 40% of her field goals, 39.6%. That's fourth on the team. I think there's a lot of teams in the region, maybe even in the nation, that if you told them, hey, your fourth best shooter on the team is going to shoot 39.6%, they would be extremely happy with that. And I'm sure to some extent our coaching staff is, but I guarantee you if we had Casey here right now and we asked her about that, she would not be happy with that percentage.
Yeah, no, you're always your biggest critic. I mean, especially if you want to be good, you're usually always your biggest critic. But the coaching staff's got to be happy with that, particularly, like you said, we're still in the early part of the season and brand new team, and these guys definitely had a lot of practice before the season, but still playing with each other for the first time.
Yeah, sure. Let's move on. We talked about her earlier. She's been called a sixth starter and leads the team in bench scoring, Trinity Horton.
Horton, 12.8 points per game, and like you said, that's the leading scorer off the bench, and actually the third leading scorer on the team, so really consistent, and leads the team in field goal percentage as well, almost 47%. It's 13th in the conference, 9th in the region, and the free throw percentage, very solid as well, 85%. Not enough attempts to be ranked in the conference or anything like that, but coaching staff certainly notices that.
Oh, absolutely. She's something else, and Sini has said of her before, we know we can bring her right off the bench, and normally she's the first person off, not always, but normally. And he knows whether it's 30 seconds into the game or 30 minutes into the game, if he brings Trinity off the bench, he's going to get the same intensity, the same scoring drive, as if he's had her in there for the past 20 minutes. And that's really a luxury that's good to have.
Yeah, it's a huge luxury, and as you said earlier, there's still a lot of really good basketball games to go, so I think you're probably going to see her numbers and her minutes go up a little bit as we get to start playing a little bit more competitive games moving forward, because she's actually really close to the 50-40-90 club already. She's sitting at 47% from the field, 41% from three, and 85% from the foul line, as we said. So if we see her numbers go up a little bit and her minutes go up a little bit, she could be putting up a really nice stat line by the end of the season.
And another one of those stats that you, again, a casual observer, which, even though I handle sports information here, I would still consider myself a casual observer because unlike some of the other sports, this is not my, I'm not going to be, the national office is not going to be calling me to go on a national tournament show to discuss basketball and break down the X's and O's, okay? But Trinity's got 5.6 rebounds per game, which is, kind of under the radar, second on this team.
Yeah, definitely under the radar, and given the fact that she's leading one of the leading scorers of the 3-point line, you're given the idea that probably most of those rebounds are coming defensively, so she's getting the things started offensively for the team as well. That's a huge luxury to have coming off the bench. So Coach Mike not only knows that she can come in and hit shots, but she can also come in and get the offense started with the defensive rebounding.
All right, well, we are up against our second break of the podcast. We have a couple more nights to talk about. Stick around after the break to hear more. You're listening to the Kingdom Podcast, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics. Jersey Mike's is a proud supporter of CCBC Essex Athletics. Located just 2.5 miles off campus at 7976 Honeygo Boulevard in White Marsh Plaza, Jersey Mike's offers a wide variety of cold and hot subs, sides, beverages, and desserts. CCBC faculty, staff, and students receive 5% off with college ID. Visit today or call 410-237-8137. Jersey Mike's, a sub above since 1958.
Let's talk about college.
Times have changed.
We've changed. I refuse to accept an education that comes with a mountain of crippling debt.
I will not confuse a fancy name with a quality education.
Let's talk practical.
Let's talk flexible.
Let's talk smart education.
For all the practical thinkers, the achievers, the can't wait to get started types out there, your community college is waiting. Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online at ccbcmd.edu and see what you can be.
All right, Aaron, we are back and got a couple of student athletes here to talk more about. And one of them transfer from Towson University, Ashlyn Flynn, and she is leading this team with 9.3 boards per game and 2.2 blocks per game as well. And her numbers around the conference and region are just as impressive.
Yeah, they really are. Fourth in blocks. And she's sending out a lot of invitations to the block party. 2.2 blocks per game. You love to see that from your big down low.
Absolutely. One of the scary parts is that even though she is hitting 38.6 from the field, she hasn't really gotten going yet from a scoring standpoint. And that scares me because, in a good way, because we're 9 games in and you can see she's starting to get into a rhythm game by game. But when she takes off, it's scary to think that as good as the Knights are playing now, they're probably going to get even better. Probably over the weekend, but as the season progresses, some of these slow starts by these student athletes that we know will not be sustained, I kind of feel bad for our opponents in the future.
Yeah, you definitely should feel bad for the opponents because she is going to get rolling with the points here sooner than later. But I think if you talk to all of her teammates, they'd probably give her a shout out and say that a lot of the baskets that they're getting that we would say are easy baskets are probably set up because of her, because she's setting a lot of good screens out there.
Yeah, she does a good job down low. We talked about her earlier, Logan Handy, and she's really come on strong lately, hitting just over 40% of her field goals, which is third on the team. And another one of those Oliver Twists on the team, if you will, 1.5 steals per game, third on the team, Aaron. And her points per game, not exactly where she would want them, but I think the important part is she's really starting to come on as of late.
Yeah, coming on as of late, and another one of those players where we're going to look at the stat line in a couple weeks, and it's going to look a little bit better. But that 1.5 steals per game already looks pretty good. She's getting a couple extra more possessions a game.
I would have to agree with that. She will definitely see those numbers go up, and I think, again, before Christmas break, you could have 5 to 6 nights on this team in averaging double-digit scoring points per game. Aaron, coming down the home stretch, and I know we don't like to step away, but we have to. When we return, we're going to talk about the night's upcoming schedule of opponents. You're listening to the Kingdom Podcast, a podcast dedicated to CCBC Essex Athletics. CCBC Essex would like to thank Chick-fil-A Nottingham Square, the official concession sponsor of Knights women's basketball. Find them in the lobby at home Knights basketball games or 10 minutes off campus at 5198 Campbell Boulevard in Nottingham, Maryland. You can also follow them on Twitter at CFA Nottingham SQ.
Let's talk about college. Times have changed. When it comes to realizing who I am and what I can be, I will not tie my dreams to somebody else's definition of success. I will not confuse a fancy name with a good education.
For all the practical thinkers, the achievers, the can't wait to get started types out there, your community college is waiting. Rethink what's possible with CCBC. Visit us online at ccbcmd.edu and see what you can be.
All right, folks, we are back. We are in our last segment of the podcast, and we thank you, as always, for joining us. Of course, the upcoming schedule, and this weekend, Aaron, they're back here at the Kingdom. It's going to be good to see them Saturday and Sunday. On the 7th, they're going to take on Potomac State College, and not really, not really much scares me about the Catamounts right now. They're 2-2. They do play Montgomery tomorrow, but their only 2 wins on the season are both against Butler County Community College.
Yeah, I mean, any given Saturday, so anything could happen. Coach Mike, I'm certainly sure doesn't want to see his team play down to competition, but the Catamounts, no disrespect, but just not the same players. Yeah,
I would agree with that. And then on Sunday, it's the other CCBC, Community College of Beaver County from Monaco, Pennsylvania. The Titans will come into this one, come into this week rather, 3-3. They will play Hagerstown the day before on Saturday. But they've kind of teetered back and forth again. Both the Knights' opponents currently 500, and one of the wins that I see on here is against a conference opponent in Cecil on the 16th of November. They took them down 20-point fashion, but Chesapeake did not fear the Titans. They took it to them 91-40. Just a few weeks ago. So, again, not an opponent that I see here that worries me. I would expect the Knights to go 2-0 this weekend.
Yeah, 2-0 this weekend, setting up the big contest on Thursday, December 12th against Hartford.
Yeah, that's going to be something. That is going to be a clash of the Titans. That's where the Titans moniker should come in right there. Big understory here in this one. The Hartford Fighting Owls, are 6-0 currently. Overall, they're going to open Maryland JUCO play against Essex in that game on the 12th. And of course, Mike Kenney, the last 5 years he coached at Hartford. That's where he got his start here in JUCO. 135-15. And when you're winning 90% of your games, Aaron, you're gonna win some hardware as well.
I know, you see that 90% right there. It's like Cy Young numbers right there. I mean, really, it's kind of just silly, You just don't see that every day. Not even Bill Belichick has a 90% winning percentage.
Well, it helps when you have an 83 game win percentage against conference opponents. He has, I don't believe it. I think it's like that first year. Maybe it was that first year he lost a conference game, and he hadn't lost one since.
Yeah, and he's got a lot more accolades to go along with his name, with his time at Hartford. But it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of reception he gets from the fans there, what kind of reception he gets from some former players and staff. But you're not going to want to miss this one. It's going to be a great game.
No, absolutely not. And you would think that there's going to be somewhat of a competitive welcome, a thanks for what you've done. Now we want to beat your brains in type of welcome, and that happens. I mean, he went to the D1 national tournament 4 to 5 years, 5 straight Maryland JUCO and Region Division I titles and 3 district championships. And then the things that you like to see, Division I All-Americans and Maryland JUCO Players of the Year, 3 of those, so much more. And he sent, dozens of student athletes on to play Division I, II, and III basketball at the NCAA level. That's what it's about for a coach. Coaches love to win 90% of their games. They love to win conference championships at the JUCO level. But what they really, count their successes on is how many kids have I graduated and how many have I gotten to the next level, and he has certainly done that.
And Coach Mike said that when we had him on the podcast earlier this year. That's exactly what he said.
Well, folks, I know it doesn't feel like it, but we've been jabbering along here for a good amount of time, and that brings us to the end. We thank you for joining us. Aaron, anything to add to this episode?
No, just do not miss the upcoming games. You got games Saturday and Sunday here at the Castle, and then Thursday of next week you're going to have the big game against Hartford. So fans, be on the lookout for that, and don't miss those games.
Yeah, and that's not too far away either. Our conference foe from the north. I mean, you jump on 95 and you can be there in about 35, 40 minutes. Always a good atmosphere there. Of course, the APG Federal Credit Union Arena, a great facility. And if you can't make it to any of our home games this weekend, we'd love to have you here, but we understand life gets in the way. It's holiday shopping season. Maybe you pull a hamstring as you're running to get whatever toy it is that your kid wants this holiday season. So if you can't make it, just turn on the computer, or everybody has a smart TV nowadays. I feel. I mean, they're selling them for $20 down at whatever electronic store had a Black Friday deal last week. I was in my house. I don't go out on Black Friday.
Man, I should have taken advantage of that.
So if you can't make it, just go to youtube.com/CCBC Essex Knights. That'll have all our streams, highlights, and of course this podcast. You can follow us online, ccbcessexknights.com. And keep tabs on this Knights basketball team. They're on Twitter at Knights_WBB. You can find them on Instagram at CCBC Essex_WBB. And, of course, follow us, too. We'd like to hear from you. We're at CCBC Essex Sports on both Twitter and Instagram. Thank you again for listening to this podcast today. Thanks to my co-host, Aaron Thomas. And thank you to the Digital Media Production and Associate of Applied Science degree programs. We appreciate it again in this great studio to do this. And we hope to get you back here next week. We'll be back. We have 2 more episodes for the year before we take our winter break. We'll see you next week. So long.